Imagine a world with no hospitals, no anesthesia, and no metal tools. A world without any scientific knowledge of how the human brain works. Now, imagine someone in that world calmly cutting into another person's skull, removing a piece of bone, and somehow keeping the patient alive. This isn't a myth or a legend. This is real. Across the globe, from Peru to Siberia, from France to North Africa, archaeologists have uncovered human skulls as old as 7,000 years, each bearing a perfectly carved hole. These holes weren't wounds from battle. They were controlled, deliberate, and surgical. Someone, thousands of years before the pyramids, knew how to open the human skull. The question that has baffled historians, doctors, and scientists for decades is simple. Who were these ancient surgeons? How did they learn to operate on the brain? And what were they trying to cure? Our story begins in a quiet field in the early summer of 1996. A small team of archaeologists was excavating a Neolithic burial site in the Loire Valley of France. They expected to find the usual artifacts of prehistoric life: pottery shards, bone fragments, and flint tools. But as they brushed away the soil from one particular skeleton, something froze them in place. The skull had a perfectly circular opening just above the left temple. It wasn't shattered or cracked. It was clean, precise, almost surgical. Even more astonishing, the edges of the bone were smooth, showing clear signs of healing. This meant the person did not die from the procedure. They survived. The dig director whispered, "How could someone in the Stone Age perform such an operation?" This simple question would lead researchers to discoveries stretching across continents, revealing a medical tradition older than any civilization we know. To understand this mystery, we must travel back 7,000 years. Imagine standing in a forest clearing. Fires crackle in the center of a small settlement. People wear animal skins, their faces painted with ash and ochre. A young man lies on a flat stone, trembling. Around him, the tribe's healer, an elder with hair braided in wooden beads, prepares for a ritual unlike anything we can imagine. There is no metal, only a sharpened piece of flint, smoothed by hours of grinding. The healer whispers prayers. Smoke from burning herbs fills the air. The young man struggles, until two others grip his arms and legs firmly. The healer leans forward. He places the flint against the skull and begins to scrape. Not cut, scrape. Slowly, patiently, for hours. This was the ancient method of trepanation. Not a sudden blow, but a gradual removal of bone. They scraped away layer after layer until the skull thinned. And when the pressure finally gave way, they would lift out a circular disc of bone, revealing the pulsating brain beneath. Why would anyone risk such a procedure? For decades, scientists believed trepanation was purely spiritual, an attempt to release evil spirits thought to cause seizures or mental illness. But that explanation is far too simple. New evidence suggests something much deeper, something surprisingly advanced. Some skulls show healing patterns that indicate the surgery relieved pressure from head trauma, possibly from hunting accidents or tribal battles. Others show signs consistent with chronic pain, infection, or neurological disorders. Several skulls even show multiple surgeries performed on the same person, years apart. This means the technique wasn't random, it was practiced, refined, and repeated. The more archaeologists discovered, the clearer the picture became. Ancient humans, long before writing or civilization, understood enough about anatomy to save lives. One of the most astonishing discoveries came from Peru. In the highlands near Cusco, researchers uncovered a burial site containing dozens of Trepan skulls. Some had survival rates so high that modern surgeons were left speechless. In fact, according to forensic analysis, certain ancient Peruvian surgeons had up to a 70 to 90% patient survival rate. That's far better than European surgeons performing the same procedure in the 19th century. Just imagine that. Stone Age doctors were more successful than doctors from only 200 years ago. The technique varied around the world, but the goal remained the same: remove a piece of skull without damaging the brain. In some places, healers used obsidian blades so sharp they could cut smoother than modern surgical steel. In others, they used tools made from bone or flint. They may not have understood bacteria or infection, but many used herbs and smoke with natural antibacterial properties. They dressed wounds with plant leaves containing antiseptic chemicals. They may have even boiled their tools in water, perhaps not knowing why it helped, but doing it anyway because observation had taught them what worked. And this is where the mystery deepens. How did so many different cultures, separated by oceans and thousands of miles, all discover the same surgical technique? This wasn't an isolated practice. It appeared in North Africa, in Russia, in Polynesia, in ancient China, in Britain, in the Andes, and in Greece. It was everywhere. It's as if humans, long before civilization emerged, instinctively sought a way to heal injuries of the head. Some researchers believe it began with necessity. Head injuries were common in the ancient world. A fall from a tree, a blow from a club, a hunting accident, these could all cause dangerous swelling inside the skull. Today, we call it intracranial pressure. Back then, the only way to release that pressure was to open the skull. And in many cases, it actually worked. Others believe trepanation began as a spiritual ritual and gradually evolved into a medical practice through trial and error. Early attempts may have been fatal. But the healers learned. They adjusted their technique. They understood where to cut, where not to cut, and how deep they could safely go. There is even evidence suggesting that ancient healers recognized the difference between skull bone and brain tissue. They didn't cut into the brain. They stopped just before reaching it. This requires steady hands, immense skill, and knowledge passed down through generations. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect is the possibility that ancient healers understood something about the mind itself. Many trepan skulls belong to individuals who suffered from chronic headaches, seizures, or mental disturbances. Some modern neurosurgeons believe the procedure may have genuinely relieved symptoms by reducing pressure or removing infected bone. Imagine being a healer in a world without medicine, watching someone in your tribe suffer day after day. And imagine having the courage or desperation to attempt something as dangerous as opening their skull. Now, imagine succeeding, but with every answer, new questions emerge. How did they control bleeding? How did they prevent infection? How did they hold the patient still without anesthesia? And most importantly, who first discovered that it was even possible? Some historians suggest trepanation was discovered accidentally, perhaps after one survived a skull fracture that broke in a way that relieved pressure. Others think it came from observing animals. When a deer or boar broke its skull and lived, early humans might have noticed patterns. Or it might have come from experimentation during rituals, with early shamans gradually learning what worked. But there is one theory more mysterious than all the others. In several ancient sites, archaeologists found skulls that had been trepaned multiple times on the same person across their lifetime, 3, 4, even 5 times. These people may have become something like early medical experts, healers who survived the procedure themselves and learned from each experience. They were marked by the hole in their skull like a badge of wisdom, a sign of power, or even divinity. To their people, these individuals weren't just survivors, they were living proof that the procedure worked. And they became the earliest teachers of surgical knowledge. The first neurosurgeons in human history. Let's return to our ancient settlement. The ceremony is nearly complete. After hours of scraping the skull, the healer finally removes the last thin layer. A small circle of bone breaks free. The patient screams, then collapses, but they're still alive. The healer immediately places a warm paste made from crushed herbs onto the open wound. This mixture contains natural antiseptic plants like yarrow or willow, which reduce inflammation and numb the pain. A piece of animal skin is placed over the opening. The surgery is finished. In the days that follow, if infection doesn't set in and the swelling goes down, the patient survives. Now let's fast forward again to the modern era. Scientists are still studying these skulls with advanced imaging. CT scans reveal bone regrowth patterns showing months, or even years, of healing. Some skulls show the beginning of a second surgery performed after the first one succeeded. This wasn't a desperate attempt. This was a practiced medical tradition. And then there's the most surprising discovery of all: children. Archaeologists found Trepan skulls belonging to children as young as 2 or 3 years old. This means ancient healers were confident enough in their technique to operate on the most fragile of patients, and many of these children survived. The edges of their skull openings are smooth, perfectly healed. This level of success would have required incredible precision, gentleness, and understanding. But what about the cultural meaning behind trepanation? Was it always medical, or was there something more? In many cultures, healers believed the head was the seat of the spirit. Opening the skull might have been a way to communicate with ancestors or release trapped forces. Some skull holes were polished smooth, suggesting the removed bone was kept as a talisman. Some cultures wore these bone discs as amulets, believing they carried power from the person who underwent the surgery. Others placed the discs in graves as spiritual offerings. This dual nature, medical and spiritual, makes trepanation one of the most fascinating practices in ancient history. It sits at the boundary between science and ritual, between survival and belief. And even today, we still don't know everything about it. Consider this: in some remote regions of Kenya and Tanzania, ritual healers were still performing versions of trepanation as recently as the 20th century. They used methods passed down orally, never written in any book. Their tools were crude, but their technique was astonishingly sophisticated. They placed the incision not too deep, avoided arteries, scraped carefully, and treated wounds with herbal antiseptics. Their survival rates were high, and they performed these surgeries not because of ancient texts or medical education, but because knowledge lived inside their culture, knowledge preserved for thousands of years. Some anthropologists believe that trepanation may be the oldest form of surgery still practiced in human memory, a tradition so ancient it predates language, passed from healer to healer across generations, stretching back to the dawn of humanity. So, where does this leave us? Why does this matter today? Because trepanation forces us to rethink everything we assume about ancient humans. We often imagine prehistoric people as primitive, fearful, and ignorant. But these skulls, these perfect circular wounds, these signs of survival tell a very different story. They reveal intelligence, courage, observation, and skill. They reveal a world where knowledge was not written on paper, but carved into bone through experience and tradition. They reveal the earliest surgeons, people who looked at suffering and refused to accept it, people who experimented, learned, and improved over generations, people who risked their own lives to save others, and people who achieved results that, even today, surprise modern experts. Trepanation reminds us that the human desire to heal is older than civilization itself. Long before the rise of cities, long before the invention of writing, long before the discovery of metal or mathematics, humans were experimenting with the limits of life and death. Somewhere in a clearing, in the dim glow of firelight, an ancient healer leaned over a trembling patient, held a sharpened stone, and dared to touch the skull, believing they could make things better. And somehow, they were right. The story of trepanation is not just the story of the first surgery. It is the story of human curiosity, human resilience, and human compassion. It is the story of how our ancestors, with nothing but stone tools and courage, unlocked a path that would eventually lead to the operating rooms of the modern world. It is the story of the very beginning of medicine, and it all begins with a simple, mysterious question carved into ancient bone. How did they know? Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into the past as fascinating as I did, make sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest mysteries. See you next time.